welcome back, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. I am a public relations and marketing professional with a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And tonight, we are going to be discussing a monumental problem that we have going on here. That is of our former president of the United States of America, Donald Trump. I have three very dynamic women with me tonight who are knowledgeable about this subject matter from various perspectives. Let me encourage you to please support my channel by hitting the thumbs up button, by sharing the video, by participating in the chat. I am always interested in everybody being involved in the conversation because it makes it much more rich and rewarding. So while you're signing on, whether you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, please share the video, hit the thumbs up button, and if you're on YouTube, please consider subscribing. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce my illustrious panel. Okay, so first up, I'm going to introduce Narissa Smith. Narissa, hey there, Narissa. Narissa is a lawyer, speaker, teacher, and journalist. And for over a decade, Narissa has worked as a law professor teaching criminal law, U.S. constitutional law, and critical race theory. She is a two-time HBCU graduate of Spelman College and Howard University Law School. Welcome back, Narissa, to the show.
Hello.
Yeah, it's so good to see you. So good to see you. Next up, I have Latrice Davis. Latrice is no stranger to the show at all. She is a former journalist with the Associated Press. Latrice is currently a senior court clerk at Queens County Civil Court in Jamaica, New York, and is a member of the Queens Community Board 6 over the Aging and Social Services and Disabilities Committee. She is also the chairwoman of the Transportation Street Safety Committee.
Actually, that's not true. I am a member of the Transportation and Street Safety Committee. I am chairwoman of the Committee for Those Without Shelter.
Okay. All right. I stand corrected.
All
right.
That's okay.
That Latrice, as you know, Latrice is very civic-minded and active, very active.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, we have Cynthia A. Johnson, the former state of Michigan representative of House District 5. Cynthia worked on reparation bills, illegal dumping bills, and cannabis legislation. Representative Johnson stood up for all of Detroit and Wayne County citizens against Donald Trump via Rudy Giuliani, who attempted to take away the votes of Black and brown citizens. And many of you guys, you might remember him going to Detroit and talking about how Detroiters cheated on voting. Y'all may remember that. On December 2nd, 2020, Cynthia stood up, and what followed was literally thousands of threats against her life. Neither Democratic nor Republican leadership stood up for her plight. Although she's no longer a representative for the citizens of Detroit, Cynthia is still a fighter for the people. Welcome back, Cynthia Johnson.
Thank you so much. And hello, ladies. So good to see you. God bless
Hello,
you.
Ms. Johnson.
Hey, is Cynthia's good enough? Narissa, Latrice,
Yes.
and Pam. You have some dynamite friends, Pam.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. Thank you for the compliment.
you guys we're all in the same group, and I am so honored to know so many powerful women. And Ann Bush, they already started. Latrice always brings fire in the gyms.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Renee,
Hello, Renee. Hello.
Let's see. Hello, Narissa.
Hello.
Here's someone. Oh goodness, I don't know who this is. That must be somebody that's just trolling us.
Yeah, I was kind of like, what was that about?
I don't know. That's somebody.
I hope that's not a hacker.
That's somebody from
A
Facebook.
troll, probably a troll, but anyway.
Yeah. Okay. But
let us get to business.
Thank you.
Y'all. Let's get to business. Okay, the first question up. Hold on. Let me get my notes together here. You know I got them together. Okay, here it is. Here it is. First question up is for Narissa, our lawyer.
Hello.
Okay. I'm okay. And so, Narissa, I'm going to start with you first. Can you briefly tell us what we can expect to happen this Tuesday when Trump goes to federal court?
All right. Well, let me back up a little bit, because there are a few things that I want to address just to make sure we're all on the same page. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to walk slow. So if you already know these things, bear with me, but some folks might not know. So first of all, what's an indictment, right? So there's two basic, I'm really oversimplifying it, but two basic types of law: civil law and criminal law, right? So if I saw Miss Pam, right, and I'm crossing the street and Miss Pam, was listening to the radio, not paying attention, and she hits me, right, I can sue her in civil court for that, because she was not paying attention to what she was doing, right? So that's one way of making things right when someone makes a mistake, is you go through what we call the civil system. Usually breach a contract, somebody breaks a contract with you, someone, personal injury falls under that, landlord, tenant, all of those things fall on that side. However, if Miss Pam saw me and she was like, ooh, I don't like that girl, I'm a get her, and she purposefully put her foot on the gas pedal and tried to get me, then that's a criminal matter, because she did something intentionally to break the law. And there are times when you can break the law negligently or recklessly, but most of the time crimes are intentional, right? So what's an indictment? There's two types of juries. The juries that you see in most cases, when you got to come for jury duty, usually we call those petit juries, right? Those are when you got to have 12 people to make a decision. But a grand jury is different. They don't decide guilt or innocence. A grand jury's job is to say, there's enough here, we think, that a prosecutor should bring charges against that person. So they will sign what they usually call a true bill, and they will say, we're giving you a true bill and we are giving you permission, basically, to go and put criminal charges against this person. It's still in the hands of the prosecutor, but it's the grand jury system. In the grand jury system, rather, the prosecutor can't make up his or her mind on a whim. They have to go before these folks. And so that's what happened in Manhattan, is the Manhattan grand jury, Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, he went before them, said, here's the evidence we have against Mr. Trump. Do you think we can bring criminal charges against him? And the grand jury said, yes, we do. We think there's enough here to bring criminal charges. So a lot of people, you're going to be hearing a lot of foolishness over the next few weeks and days about, oh, grand juries can indict anybody over anything. When I went to law school, one of the things that they used to like to say, a grand jury could indict a ham sandwich, for a crime. And the standard is lower than what you need in criminal court. Keep that in mind. But the prosecutor still has to prove that there's some evidence that a crime could have occurred. They just can't go in there and say, oh, I don't like this person, and lock them up. You have to have some proof, and what they spend their time doing is presenting that proof. So with Mr. Trump here, what's going on is Miss Stormy Daniels, she's an adult entertainer. He had a liaison with her. Miss Pam, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that your channel stays on the good graces of YouTube. But he had a liaison with this woman, and in an attempt to make sure that she didn't talk about any of it, he paid her, I think it was $135,000 was the amount that he paid to her. Now, you might be thinking, how is that a crime? People pay hush money to people all the time. Well, the problem here in this particular case is where the money came from. If it came out of Donald Trump's personal pocket, we wouldn't be talking about this right now. But what they are thinking in Manhattan is that the payment came through perhaps one of his businesses or other monetary channels that were not on the up and up. So it was not necessarily his money. And if he used business funds to pay for a private matter like that, that could be considered fraud. It could be considered a lot of other things. And this is the part where I have to say, if you see a lot of MAGA types saying, well, these charges are dumb, we don't know and they don't know because the indictment hadn't been unsealed yet. And we have to wait until everything is out in the open to really be able to judge these charges. And I'm sorry, I know that was probably longer than you want, but I want to give us a baseline for the discussion so everybody knows what's going on.
Okay. Very good. So Latrice, since you reside in New York, and although you're in the court system, albeit the civil court system, what are you hearing? What are the whisperings that you're hearing in and around New York from your friends and colleagues about Trump and Tuesday's court appearance?
I mean, we're racing for a circus. And just to piggyback on what Narissa was saying, you know, one of the things that's irked me about the coverage up to this point is the lies and propaganda. Like, a lot of people seem to not understand how a grand jury works, which is why I appreciated Narissa breaking it down. It's, you know, a grand jury is comprised of up to 20, unlike a petit jury, which is 12, a grand jury is comprised of up to 23 people. You need at least 16 to have a quorum. And whether it's 60 and anywhere between 16 to 23 people gather in a room, they review the evidence. And like Larissa said, they simply determine, is there enough evidence to proceed with a trial? If so, we will issue an indictment, which is an accusatory instrument. This is not a personal vendetta. And unlike a lot of people, I appreciate Mr. Bragg. And bear in mind, this isn't the only investigation. You also have Letitia James, who's our attorney general. You have Fannie.
I got a whole list going.
You have Fannie Wilson, I believe, in Georgia, and you have Merrick Garland. I would rather they take their time and get this right because they only have one shot. And Mr. Bragg is bound by this book I'm holding up here, which is the Penal Law and Criminal Practice Law of the State of New York. I don't know if you can see it, but that's what he is bound by. And in terms of what we're hearing, like, we expect a circus. But I don't think it's, in terms of Trump supporters coming out, I don't think the numbers are going to be as big as he wants them to be.
Even with Marjorie Taylor Greene's telling everybody to go there, you don't think? I
think it's going to be a small turnout, maybe a couple of dozen, a couple of hundred at the most. But I'm not anticipating another January 6th.
Okay.
I'm not anticipating another January 6th, although I do think they are preparing for that.
Yes.
Also, my thing, and I said this before, until I see a mugshot and a perk walk, I just feel like, when he issued that tweet last week about how the indictment was going to come down, bear in mind the grand jury's not operating on his timetable. They're not even operating on Alvin Bragg's timetable.
Right.
They're operating on whatever the ADA presents to them. And it could be a one-day thing. It could be a multi-day thing. And I would like to think, given who we're dealing with, Bragg and the ADAs are not going to be half-assed about it. They got all their I's dotted, all their T's crossed, and I'm not privy to what they presented to grand jury either. Right. But as Narissa pointed out, rumor has been that Trump paid her off with campaign funds, which is against the law.
Right.
Which is why we're here. Like Narissa said, this was like out of his pocket, nobody would care. But if he's using campaign funds, then yes, that's a problem. Just like when Elliot Spitzer was governor and he had his dalliances, it's like, hey, if you're using taxpayer funds to do what you do with call girls, then you got to go. And that's what ultimately happened.
Right. Okay. So, former Representative Cynthia A. Johnson, my question for you is, as a former legislator in the state of Michigan, you can best relate to the threats that DA Bragg is currently receiving. I'm assuming that as an officer of the law, he has federal protection for him and his family due to the threats he's received. That's an assumption, and that could be a great big assumption. I don't know if you had any formal protection when you were receiving your threats and what have you, but how do you just explain what that felt like and how you dealt with it and all that good stuff?
All of this is so triggering for me. And let me first say about Alvin Bragg. I'm so proud of you, Mr. Bragg. If you happen to be watching this, you and your colleagues, you have done a phenomenal job, and I appreciate you. And like Latrice and the rest of us are saying, we would prefer you to take your time, but we know you've already taken your time. So the time is up. We're just waiting for Tuesday. And I wish I could be there because this.
I don't. I don't want to be anywhere near Center Street when that goes down.
What were you saying, Cynthia?
I wish I would pay to be there. That person had made my life a living hell. And with regard to what Donald Trump reported, and for anyone to believe anything that this person would say is unbelievable to me. But I'll tell you what, Donald Trump probably was laughing his butt off because he spent a story and had all of us talking about it.
Yes, he did.
All of these resources, all of the resources that the media spent on sharing that he was going to be arrested 2 Tuesdays ago, and it didn't happen, which means that we all, those of you who are in the media, you did not do your due diligence.
Exactly.
And Mike Duggan, excuse me, Donald Trump, well, he reminds me of him, but Donald Trump, he was correct when he said, when he speaks about the media, in a sense, he'll throw shit, excuse me, he'll throw things, but I want to do right by you, Pam.
Yeah, but you know what? Fortunately, I don't get bleep for those kind of words. Fortunately,
well, you know what? I've had enough, and I've learned my lesson about bleep, 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 bleep. So I try to refrain. I've learned since I've learned my lesson. Anyway, but Donald Trump, if the country, if he had not been indicted, it would be like, and it is still like a slap in the face, because we're all bracing to see whether or not is he actually going to be arrested? Is he actually going to be in handcuffs? Probably not. But first things first, he's been indicted.
Yes.
Something that has never happened, but we've also never had such an individual in office like this either.
Never.
Who would have his minions come to the state of Michigan and to other states and try to strong arm the legislature. And he's getting everything that he deserves. I pray, I hope that he spends the rest of his life in prison, even if it's 2 years. If it's the rest of his life in prison, I want to see that. Yes, I would pay. But with regard to, did I have the same type of protections as assuming Elvin Bragg had federal protections? I did not have those protections. I had the state police and my local officials. They were protecting me, I guess, as much as you might think that they would protect a person, but they haven't protected me that much, because there's a person by the name of Sandra Bachman, Bachman, who was the woman who made the threat to me back in May of 2021. And where she was supposed to have a hearing. And I reached out to the Attorney General's office, reporting from an anonymous person that this Sandra Bachman may have fled. I didn't find out until last week.
What?
Well, listen, I didn't find out until last week that supposedly the judge put a warrant for her arrest because she's out here and they don't know where she is. Well, shame on you all, because I gave you the information and you sat on it. So I wonder, why are we so treated differently? Why, especially women, Black women, I mean, we are treated so differently. It's like we don't ever get a chance to breathe. Let me breathe. Anyway, so let me breathe and you all take over from here. And I need to sit back and breathe, because I'll tell you, honestly, I'm disappointed. Not only in the Republican Party, but in the Democratic Party, the party that take us for granted. The party, and now the Republicans are doing it. The party who has to find the face that looks like ours to have a prominent role or a seat, only to be have no power whatsoever. And but the Republicans are following that playbook of misusing Black folks, claiming that they have Black folks who you're claiming that the parties are inclusive. And we know that is far from that.
It's not true. We know that it's not true. I'm going to circle back to Shoei Howie's got this question here, and it's very specific to Michigan and not really on topic with what we're talking about. But if we get a chance, we'll try to address it, Shoei. Narissa.
Yes, ma'am.
Can't Trump be charged for the rhetoric that he said online against D.A. Bragg?
Most likely not. And I want to go back and touch on something that Representative Johnson had said, which is we can pick apart leaders and parties, but to me, there's no doubt that the Republican Party is going well out of its way to become the party of white supremacy. And as long as that's the case, we have to stop them. Just period, full stop. We might not like everything that the Democrats have done, but at least they're not looking for ways to find where the white supremacists are and to tell them, we love you, you're very special.
Okay, but may I interrupt on that though? Because this has been my experience as a legislator when we're having our caucus meetings and we're off site and we're talking about legislators who are in these hard seats in these hard districts. Hard districts means, listen, we're in a district, we may be Democrat, but we're white. And we don't want to step on the toes of our brethren, of the Republicans. Because if we step on their toes, then we might be hurting ourselves and might not get elected. So let me just be real clear. Hold on for a second. I loved it when the Speaker of the House threatened to do things to the DA office.
Turn to Kevin McCarthy.
Hit back with a "you don't even have jurisdiction over this office." I know that's right. Yes, drop the mic. But we have to be real cautious, because just because, and I've experienced this too, just because you sitting back next to someone and they have a D next to their name does not mean that they are doing anything for your good. Trust and believe what I say. And another thing, and please forgive me, attorney, but I'll tell you another thing too. I have never seen a time that there has been any appropriations to help our communities. And I'm talking about in Michigan now. I don't know how it is in other states.
Well,
and
I happen to be from Michigan, so I actually know a little bit about it.
Okay.
So way back from the Blanchard and Engler days.
Oh, you are on it. So, and you took me off my square. Lord have mercy. Last thing that I said. What was the last thing that I said?
It's so much, but you know what? We got time, and
okay.
we gonna keep conversation.
I do want to answer your question,
yes, Carissa,
yeah, please. And I want to go back, because the bottom line of what I'm saying is, as they used to say, and as the title of the series even says, we got to keep our eye on the prize.
Yes,
we can't let our personal frustrations with Democrat, we just can't, because I'm gonna tell you, and yes, this is me with my lawyer hat on, but I mean, I gotta wear it. Women not having the right to do what they want to do with their bodies, that is not a Democratic platform. That's a Republican platform. I read something that made me sick the other day. It was about a young girl, a teenager in Texas. It was in the New York Times or the Washington Post, I can't remember. And this baby did not want to carry this pregnancy to term, and they made her. And not only did she end up having a baby, now she has twins.
I heard about that.
Yeah, and I think that is just, that's the opposite of the direction we want to be heading in this country. And one thing that we all can do is to make sure, I like to use the analogy, and again, like I said, I'm from Michigan, so I hate this guy, and I'm very proud to say that I hate him. Think about Michael Jordan back in the 80s, right? He could put up 50, 60, 70 points a night. But until he had Scottie Pippen, Horace, all the other evil people there with him, he didn't have the tools that he needed to get past the best basketball team of all time, which is the Bad Boy Pistons. So what the problem is on a national level is, just to keep in mind, we have to not just vote in presidential elections. I tell every Black person and every person of color, quite frankly, that I meet, we have to vote for everything from president to dog catcher. And we cannot let us take a single race for granted, because that's how we get the appropriations. That's how, and all those hard seats in difficult electoral politics won't matter as much. But the basic question that you asked, though, is, can Trump be prosecuted? Most likely, almost 100% no, because of the First Amendment. It's very rare for a person to be prosecuted for the words that they say, unless those words are, hey, will you kill somebody for me? Then, that's, or if, as he did in January 6th, if you're encouraging people to go out and go somewhere and engage in illegal activity. But other than that, the things that he's saying against Mr. Bragg, I don't think fall in any exception to the First Amendment. But I do have to say, though, and this also goes back to what Representative Johnson was saying, Black folks and other people of color in public places, we have to put our protection around them, however we can. And
Mhm.
I'm really concerned. I have to tell y'all, from Miss Willis down there in Fulton County, because
Yes.
she's had her grand jury reported to her a while back. They just haven't released their findings yet.
But
And when they actually do, I'm very afraid for her, because it's very easy for this Fox News machine and this other so-called media, because you can't call them media because really all they do is shout and spread fear, but this conservative so-called media to spin a tale like, look at these evil Black people, look what they're doing to your country, look what they're doing to your president. That's the narrative that they're going with, and that's what's so dangerous, because talking like that about one of us puts all of us in danger.
That's right.
And I know that when they did to Sister Johnson, that wasn't right, and she should not have had to go through that. And
Not by myself.
I guarantee, and I hope you would agree with me, that if she was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white woman, people would have had a lot harder time trying to, make threats to her and feel comfortable. But I mean, we in the
look what happened with our Gretchen, but with Gretchen Whitmer, the governor.
they tried to kidnap her.
So it's really, I was shocked at that they didn't get punished more harshly.
Why? Why were you shocked? Why?
Because she's a white woman. That was the other thing. I just knew that they would get them, But listen, we got a question from the chat. Can the attorney HU speculate on what's taking so long for charges to come regarding the Georgia election interference, that's with Fannie Willis, and the January 6th incitement mess? They had the evidence. Trump is on tape and video. And Elie Wiesel has said over and over that he feels that Merrick Garland really has not moved and not had done enough.
There's a circle of, how can I put this diplomatically? There's some folks that just because they have a blue check mark next to their name on Twitter, it doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. And I feel very confident in saying that. And I wish that more of us would take the time to find the people who actually know what they're talking about, as opposed to the people who have the broadest audience or the loudest megaphone, because everyone doesn't know what they're talking about. And I would say, I'll circle back. I think that this is what Sister Latrice was saying earlier. I would rather have them wait and take the time and come correct with it than to make a mistake, mess it up, and then you have people like, see, it was all a frame job. It was a witch hunt. Ain't that his favorite word?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want that. And so again, with Miss Willis, her grand jury, they've given her the report. They voted to release the report, but it just has not been released yet. Who knows what's coming? The one thing that we know is that grand jury said they were confident that at least 2 of the folks that testified before them committed perjury. We know that Rudy was one of those folks. So who knows what else they're going to come down with. So it does take time. And even though, and I like the fact that Miss Judy, you said they're on tape and on video. Again, when things involve speech like incitement, Americans, for good or for ill, have a big aversion to want to prosecute anything that's related to speech, because you want to be really careful, because where's the end of that?
You don't want to set a bad precedent.
Exactly. If you have Black college students protesting on their campus, are they going to be arrested next? Here in North Carolina, we just had a law that they passed that made it easier for them to prosecute people accused of quote unquote rioting. I'm still beside myself with that. So we have to really watch how they're trying to encroach on these things.
On the First Amendment rights.
Exactly. And so I think that even though Trump is on tape and on video saying certain things, what they're doing behind the scenes is not just saying, oh, we got him on tape. They're trying to connect the text messages, all the other things that show clear intent, that it is no other conclusion that other than that Trump wanted those folks to go into the Capitol and do the horrible things that they did. And having worked in federal court before and seen all of those things, go down, I can tell you that at least on the federal side, when the feds bring a case, not always, there's some shaky cases, but usually when the feds have you, they usually have you dead to rights. Like, it's really hard to get out of a federal case, because usually these are really good prosecutors who are good at what they do. And that's the other thing that makes me upset. I know we're going back to other question, but Alvin Bragg didn't get to be the Manhattan DA of one of the most prestigious offices by being a jackleg. He knows what he's doing. I'm sure
he does.
Smart. And not only what Miss Latrice said about having rules to follow, there's ethical rules that lawyers have to follow. And I'm sure he had to take it as high up as he could. He probably talked to the governor of New York and whoever else he could, or just to make sure that they knew what was going on and what what's happening. So I feel like I've talked too much, but that's the answer to the question, I think, is that we want them to take their time. And in terms of when she's going to release that report, she might have got a call from New York, like saying, okay, hold the phone, because we got something that we've been cooking. So she might say, okay, I'm going to let that go first. And, I'll just wait my turn. We don't know what conversations were had, but it's coming. It's coming for sure.
And mind you, Alvin Bragg isn't the only attorney who's investigating him. You also have Letitia James, the attorney general, doing a separate investigation into Trump's organization and money laundering and what have you. So
special counsel.
Yeah, but that's why, like I said, I would rather they all take their time and do this right. I get that people are foaming at the mouth, but at some point you have to tune out the noise. And I think, as far as I can tell, Merrick Garland and the Justice Department has done a good job of that. Just tune out the noise and focus on the work. I mean, if the evidence is there, sooner or later, one way or the other, Trump will have to answer. And in regards to Renee's question about the rumor about Trump arriving in New York tomorrow night, I mean, I feel like if they were to do that, like to snatch him up and arraign him tomorrow night, I feel like in a way that'll be playing into his hands. That's what he wants. He wants to create drama. He sees this as one big reality show. So I think they would be playing into his hands by doing that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I agree. I totally agree. From the PR lens, it would be detrimental to all of us. And here's the thing that I keep hearing on the news lately is that from some of the attorneys that have been interviewed, they're saying that Trump can still run if he gets indicted and charged. He can still run for office.
Well, legally, yes.
Yeah,
legally, yes, he can.
Yeah. But you know what? Derek Reed made a point early on about.
And you know what? Just the thought of something like that makes me want to throw up. Okay, go on. I'm sorry.
I understand, Cynthia. I get sick too. But Dwayne had made this point about Nixon could have been indicted had Ford not pardoned him. And then Agnew was a real crook too. He was, oh my God, he was doing other stuff that was way beyond Watergate. But the thing is, Michael Beschloss, one of our premier presidential historians, said, had they went ahead and let Nixon plead guilty or do something instead of going through that whole pardoning situation, we would have had precedent for what is happening now in our country. And so we really screwed up back then by being too soft and not playing hardball at the beginning. And he was saying that we should have done something. We should not have just pardoned them or whatever.
Well, it goes back to people got to know the Constitution. And that's why whenever I have an opportunity like to do your show, Miss Pam, or whenever I can say these things, the Constitution gives the power to pardon. The president, I always tell, when I was teaching constitutional law and when I talk to like my online students now, I said, everyone thinks that the president is like Superman, like with all these powers. Well, under the Constitution, no, really Congress is
Yes.
Superman. And actually, I would say even the Supreme Court is more powerful than the president. I always told them the president is more like Aquaman, very powerful in limited situations. I remember watching the Super Friends and like, okay, y'all know y'all didn't have to go to the water. Y'all just did that so Aquaman could have something to do. So basically, if it has something to do with foreign affairs, something like that, the president has a lot of, power there other than making a treaty. Congress has to sign off on that. President can't declare war, but the president can send troops. So there's a lot of power there. And also when it comes to appointments, appointing Supreme Court judges, other federal judges. But not only that, the president has the sole power in the Constitution to pardon people of federal crimes. Some people use it for good things. Biden is using it to pardon the folks who are convicted of federal marijuana crimes, most of whom are Black and brown. I'm all for that, because there's no good for those folks just sitting in jail over a drug that we know should never have been a Schedule I drug anyway. But the other part, though, is that the president, Ford, made the political calculation that pardoning Nixon was going to be the right thing for him to do. And I agree that, it probably should have gone down differently, but the only person who maybe could have stopped that would have been Betty Ford. People say that, she was his conscience, and I don't even know if she was on board, with that decision that he made, because it was a very unpopular decision at the time. But this goes back to two things. We have to know how things work, and we have to vote, because a lot of these things happen because people don't show up and vote. And I know that this horse is deceased, dead. We don't have the repass and everything, but I can't let go of this.
You can't let go.
30,000 more, especially young folk, to turn out in Milwaukee, in Detroit, in Philadelphia. Trump would have never even been president. Now, don't get me wrong. Trump should have never even won the nomination, because he made it clear from the moment he got off that escalator and started calling Latino people rapists and other crazy stuff. People knew what he was all about. So we cannot dismiss the role that white supremacy and white grievance and all those things played in the rise of Trump. However, we have to get to the point where we realize, we do have things in this country to protect. And the way to protect them is to vote. Revolution gets you things. Voting is how you protect those things. In the 60s, they didn't die so we could be up here just giving our rights away for free. We need to make sure that we don't let people abuse us and take away what our ancestors fought hard for.
How do we do that?
Well, before we continue that conversation, there's a couple of things I do want to point out. Presidential pardon is only for federal crimes.
That's
what
right.
Alvin Bragg is going after him for is not federal.
Right.
That is an important distinction.
Thank you for clearing that up. Yes.
Same thing with Latrice. Excuse me?
It's not federal. I thought it was federal.
No.
That man has so many crimes going on that I almost put together. I was going to put together a quick PowerPoint, but basically, really quick, there's the one he just got indicted on, the Manhattan DA. There's the New York State, not New York City.
That's not federal either.
James, about the fraud in the Trump
organization.
There's the federal DOJ investigation, twofold, one into the January 6th stuff. And by the way, just today, I want to say just a few hours ago, they're looking into him for obstruction of justice. So not so much for what he did for January 6th, but trying to cover up some of the stuff, because they always do that. And don't forget, we still got the documents at Mar-a-Lago and everything he did, not trying to give those things back. And we still got Fonnie Willis, and everything that's happening in Fulton County. I can't blame you, Ms.
Yeah, it's a lot, but I bring that up because that distinction matters.
Yeah, I thought that was federal.
Alvin Bragg is not federal. Neither is Letitia James. Another thing I want to say
Letitia's is the state stuff.
Correct.
Yeah.
But another thing I want to say, we were talking about Congress. This is why speaking of mistakes, I think it was a huge mistake for Congress not to impeach Trump when they had the chance.
Well,
And they
they did
had not
impeach
just
him.
one chance, they had two. And they
It-
fell and they came up short both times. And that was also, in my view, was a mistake. And I think that's another thing that has come back to haunt this country.
yes.
Oh, I think you're
That's
exactly
a very,
right.
I almost forgot about that. You know, it's been so exhausting, absolutely exhausting to deal with all of this stuff with this man. Yeah, Narissa?
Yes, I had to raise my hand. I know I'm not close. I just want to say real quick, going back to what Ms. Davis was just saying, is that in the Constitution, see, Trump was impeached. He just wasn't convicted. So going back to where we were, so the House kind of acts like the grand jury, and they say we think there's enough to remove him from office.
Right.
And because, again, I hate to keep going, but the Democrats controlled the House both times. But the Senate gets to try and convict. And both times it was controlled by Republicans. Now, if they had waited a little bit after January 6th, and if they had done that, then they would have been able to, have a different balance of power. But, I think it all comes back to who's there making these decisions. Who are we sending, and all politics is local and is national, and we have to vote in everything and
up and down the ballot, people, up and down. That's why this show exists. That's exactly why. It's my little way to bring that
give back,
so people can talk, and hopefully other people will listen to different voices that aren't on national news or whatever, just to hear and learn something differently from a group of their peers.
May I go back to something?
Yes.
Something that our attorney said. Our attorney friend Marissa said.
Yes.
It was some time back when I was speaking, and she had mentioned something about not taking things personal. Well, I'm going to tell you, I take all of this personal. And anybody who is a resident of this country and of your states, if you don't take personal what is going on, then you won't do the job of checking out who these people are, that we are all on the same page saying that you must vote. But don't vote anyone just because they're on the ballot. Once upon a time, I used to vote like this because I didn't know someone. I would say, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, blah, blah, blah. And that's how I used to vote. Or if I recognized the name, or if the name happened to be a last name that may have been mine, or my good friend over there, or this person came to my church. So yeah, I voted for that person. I'm going to tell you, I have made so many mistakes in my life in voting. But in my 64 years of being on this earth, I do know.
I want to see ID, ma'am. You said 64. Ain't no way that's true.
65 in August. Of being on this earth is long, and all of what I have seen, and I've learned so much during my 2 sessions to my 2 tours as a legislator, that it's not just good enough for you to vote. You have to hold these people accountable. When there are issues going on, if there are appropriations being given away to your local, and it has to go to your state, you need to go to those meetings, committee meetings. You need to ask questions. Don't just go for the okie doke. That's all I'm simply saying.
Oh no,
you're absolutely right.
100%.
Who of us don't want our communities, businesses coming into our communities? I do. I want to see my city thrive. Absolutely. I want to see my country thrive. But it really just kind of pisses me off when I see certain people where their communities can thrive, where our numbers are being used, but the dollars don't come back into our community. That's where I have a problem. I always will. And I will just say this: don't accept just anything. And just because the person looks like you,
Well, yeah, all skin folk ain't kin folk. I know that.
That's right.
But I was just going to say that in terms of, running for office and what have you, you're right. We do have to hold people accountable at all levels, local, state, citywide, what have you. And, the thing is, it's just being informed and being engaged. A lot of times you don't see, like in terms of running for a judge, you don't see them by the train station or out and about until they want your vote. And people tell on themselves all the time. Now with Trump, I knew him for what he was from the get-go.
Yeah.
Before, even when, I like a lot of people, and I've owned up to this in the past, I didn't take him seriously until it was too late.
Neither.
But Trump's rise to power has given, white supremacists and those who follow that ideology, his rise to power has given those people permission to come out of hiding. Right. So now we know who we're dealing with. We know what we're up against. And I've also said this before. The 2020 election, the fact that election was as close as it was, says more about us than it ever will about Trump.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And can I, Miss Pam, one of the comments, can I address one of the comments right quick?
Yes.
It does relate to this.
Which one?
I think it was Mr. or Miss Howie who said that about we need to have people of color registered to vote so we can get them on juries.
Yes.
Every single lawyer that I talked to, and this is not just criminal law either, having people of color on juries makes a difference. But because of the way the system is set up, we're less likely to be in that jury panel because they take it usually in most states from registered voters.
Right.
And guess who else they take from that registered voter panel? The grand jurors. So if you don't like what a grand jury is doing or something like that, you are not participating in the process. If you're not registered to vote, you don't have a chance. But just know that, yes, the chances of a person of color being acquitted increase when you have even one person of color on the jury. Even on the civil side, if you have a medical malpractice case, y'all probably didn't know that the awards are lower for a person of color if it's an all-white jury. So please show up for jury duty. It might not be Donald Trump all the time, but you'll make a difference in somebody's life.
Yes.
Okay. Renee, her thing is so big it covers up you guys' face. I think sometimes us Dems are very impatient. The one thing about the Republicans, they wait decades to put people in place.
Yes, they do.
They want, i.e. judges, politicians, school boards, etc. Trumpster was elected to make sure he put people in place on the federal level. Yes, he was. To be able to do what he is doing now. We as a political party, I think that she meant to say, have to be more strategic. Absolutely. The fortunate thing about being a Dem is also our Achilles heel. We are not monolithic, which means any Dem president cannot she ran out of space, but probably she cannot police something. And then show me how it says influence people now. So Easter dinner, Mother's Day, Memorial Day, Father's Day, and on support recognition. Absolutely. And Showy Howie, just to I now know what you were talking about when you said the farts, because that was the complaint about Giuliani when he was in Michigan. He was passing gas sitting there.
Not too much.
I forgot all about that.
He was passing gas. And that's what Showy Howie was talking about.
Is that the same day that the hair dye was?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't the same.
No, it wasn't the same day.
No, it wasn't the same day. It was the same guy, though. Not the same day, though. But it was the same guy.
Yeah.
They said he broke wind on the 2nd of December, the day that I was on the committee.
That all that stuff happened to you.
But I didn't hear it. But
the lady sitting next to him did, and they showed her expression and all of that. I remember Howie, that we thought you were a troll when you brought that up right away. So,
Yeah, 'cause I was like, what? It's like, yeah, now, yeah, it all makes sense now.
Hey,
It all makes sense
we
now.
need to applaud Dwayne Reed. He says he's been on 3 juries in 6 years. That is fun.
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
That's important. Please tell everybody else that it does matter. Every study that they've done, whether it's a mock jury or a real jury, even having one person of color, it changes the whole dynamic of the jury. So please know you can make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they probably wouldn't have me because they probably say I'd be too biased on things, and that may be very well true.
It just depends on the case and what they're looking for. They're going to ask a lot of questions beforehand, and they'll cut some people based on those questions, and they'll cut other people based on other things. Sometimes, if they have a conflict that they just can't get out. If the defendant or plaintiff is your cousin, then clearly they're going to cut you, but just show up, please.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing, may I add to that, is that I know that there are a lot of people who will show up and already have it in their minds that they're going to be cut because they're going to go in there and make it so that they can be cut.
Mm-hmm.
Will you do so and so, or do you have these biases? And they'll go in there and say, yep, I don't like those. You can easily make yourself cut, but we ask that you not do that. You be honest. You be just because you're helping our country and you're helping your people.
Yes.
Howie says, and those flags is still my effing country.
That's right. That's right.
I agree with you because I am very much a patriot. I am.
Me too.
But I feel that it is my country. Our ancestors fought, died, bled, built this thing, and we should be able to enjoy the fruits of it. And what it states in the Constitution, even though the Constitution was written for and by white wealthy men, nevertheless, it exists and it's supposed to apply to all of us, regardless of what the original intention was. So, therefore, I want it all.
The way I see it, and I've said this before as well, I pledge allegiance to this country by obeying its laws and paying my taxes.
Hello. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, we do.
I love that.
Yeah. And I can just say too, I think that some people have a narrow definition of patriotism.
Yes.
And their definition of patriotism is rah, rah, America, USA. That's not patriotism. My version of patriotism looks more like the kind of tough love, that your mama or your aunties or somebody will give you when they know you're not doing right. Be like, no, you need to get it together. And I think that you got people who don't want our kids. Literally, we don't want our kids to learn about Ruby Bridges, Bessie Coleman, any of those things. Don't want them to learn about slavery because they're so threatened by the fact that somebody might not think that America is a perfect place. It's never been a perfect place.
Never.
For anybody. And I think it's important for the babies to know that so that they can learn how to make it better. But if you don't want them to know how to make it better and you don't want them to think that it needs to be improved, then you take that DeSantis plan of let's make sure that they don't know about it, which, by the way, is probably 99% unconstitutional. But by the time it goes through the Florida courts, he may be running again. Oh, which reminds me, can I just say, even if Trump gets indicted, yes, Miss Renee Sharkey said, will he be tried before the election? Maybe not, because trials take a long time. The jury selection on this case is going to be insane. I don't know where they will try this case. They might have to take it to Canada. They can't, because everybody in America has an opinion about this guy. So it's going to be hard. But at the same time, I really do think that we have to not get overconfident. That's a big fear of mine, because yes, nothing in the Constitution says to run for president, you got to be 35 years old, natural born citizen. And I can't remember the other one, but there's 3 of them, but they're all very easy to meet, right? And there's nothing that says if you've been indicted or convicted, in theory, he can move the West Wing to Leavenworth or something.
Cell block D.
Yeah.
But my bigger fear and concern is that even if it's not Trump, like Miss Pam said, it's like he's let all of the now all these white supremacists, they now know that there's people out there that respond to that. So now you got the Lauren Boeberts and the Marjorie Taylor Greens talking about Jewish space lasers and all the other foolishness. You got these people out there. They know that people respond to that. I'm more concerned that it's going to be somebody like Ron DeSantis or Greg Abbott from Florida or Texas who has more experience in government than Trump ever did. And they know just enough not to say the real stupid stuff that really turned people off, that turned a lot of people off from Trump. They know enough not to go on Twitter in all caps acting a fool. And I think that it's just, you know, back in the day in the civil rights movement, they had the KKK that was being very violent and very vocal with their racism. But then you had the citizens councils. Those were the folks with the suits and ties who they weren't going to go burn a cross in your yard, but they were definitely going to make sure that those schools didn't get integrated.
Yes.
They were going to use the legal channels. And my fear is that politically, even if Trump is indicted, we can't, one, assume that it's still not fools out there who won't vote for him, because we know that they are. He's already raised, I think, $5 or $6 million since the indictment was announced. So I think that's interesting to see. But also beware of more refined Trump that has the same messages, same goals, feels the same way about people of color, feels the same way about
and I want to piggyback on that, because that's why I personally am very wary of the Lincoln Project. Yes, they make great ads, knocking Trump down a peg or two. But to me, they're the kind of people, they don't say the quiet parts out loud. Like I would be on Twitter and I would read stupid things like, oh, Biden should dump Harris from the ticket and make Liz Cheney his running mate. And I'm like, what? You do realize, oh yeah. And you do realize, and the thing is, Liz Cheney, just because she can't stand Trump does not make her an ally. Same thing for Adam Kinzinger. Just because they don't care for Trump does not mean, oh, they're on our side and they support us. They do not. Their voting records say as much. And with people who are not in position of power, whether it's Steve Schmidt, Rick Wilson, whomever, basically, they don't say the quiet parts out loud. That's what they don't like about Trump. He says the quiet parts out loud. But again, just because they don't care for Trump doesn't mean they don't share the same mindset that he does.
But
so I just wanted to put that out.
Who are we talking about now? When you said just because they it doesn't mean that they
don't. Project people. I don't know, Latrice. You know what?
I'm wary of them because, again, like they don't say the quiet part out loud, but I have they have not given me any reason to believe, based on their record, that, oh, they're supporting the causes that we support. They just simply don't like Trump.
Yeah, it's like Jimmy Kimmel, I think, said it best. He said, yeah, Lincoln Project, but like y'all still don't want to expand Medicare. So like, what are y'all doing? Y'all are just going to like kick me out of the hospital, but with a smile on your face, unlike the other Republicans who just kick you out. It's like, you're going to give me a hug before you kick me out the hospital, because you don't want, universal.
I mean, my mom would always say to me, like, if you're going to stab me, don't stab me in the back. Stab me from the front. That way I see it coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
you can ask all you want. It doesn't mean it's going to happen.
I agree. But I'm just saying, like, I'm not going to hold the Lincoln Project up as some bastion of, they're going to help us. It's like, nah, because I've seen what y'all do.
Right. And you know what? I agree with that, Latrice, though I will say this. If it weren't for the Lincoln Project and their ads, Biden wouldn't have won.
That's right.
That combination of their communication and the endorsement of our guy in South Carolina, we wouldn't be here. And their communication was consistent, biting, creative, and
And give them all that. But again, what are their policies?
we
What
don't.
is their ideology? Like,
What
are they
is your
really?
policies and ideologies? Listen, this all triggers me because it takes me right back to Lansing as a legislator. I'm a legislator in a party who was supposed to have my back. I had the country's back. I asked Rudy Giuliani, are you and the president honest men? And I get gabbled down.
Question.
I get thousands on top of thousands of threats. And even my own party, after I put that live out on Facebook, that 3-minute live, and they, in one of their whatever, they took 30 seconds of it and made it something that it really wasn't. And the following day, the Republicans put out a letter sanctioning me. Not only did that, but also the Democrats pretty much carbon copied that, and to this day have not said I apologize or I'm sorry. So
I'm sorry that the party didn't show up for you. Like, I'm sorry that happened to you.
But it's not about me, because it didn't happen to Cynthia. It happened to our people. It happened to every Black woman, every cunt that I was called, every monkey that I was called, every cross that we gonna put on your grass, on your lawn. Every nigga I was called. And I mean, I got thousands. We know we got over 10,000 emails and phone calls. Can you imagine that?
No.
Can you even imagine something like that? So it wasn't about Cynthia A. Johnson. Cynthia A. Johnson had a duty as she sat there on that committee as the minority vice chair. And I saw what my own party, with the Democratic Party, did and did not do. I saw what the NAACPs did not do. I saw what the churches did not do. I'm talking about folks who look like us. Okay? So I'm sorry if I sound angry.
We have a right to be.
I am angry. I have become someone who I'm not. I used to be out and about all the time. I have to look behind me while I'm in the car. I have to concern myself whether or not where this Sandra Bachman is. I have to concern myself with the high-powered rifle that folks said that I'm not going to be able to see, but we're going to blow you away. So I'm not so impressed with my party right now. Will I go to some other party? Of course I'm not. I'm going to fight my ass off for not only my people, but for our country and for all those goodwill people, including white people. But I'm also going to call you out, and I don't care if you my daddy. If you do something wrong and it affects our community, I'm going to call your ass out. Democratic or Republican. Ask the governor. I've called her out too. Governor Whitmer. Yes, I've called her out on several things. There's so many things that are going on behind the scene. I mean, we have prisons where they forbade me to go into the prison as a legislator to go check on these people. They forbade me because I called them out because I had gone to one of the prisons in Michigan that was absolutely atrocious. Once they saw what I sent to the media, they created a effing lie vindicating an absolute lie. And I sent that to the governor, Democratic now, and to the attorney general, Democrat.
Yes.
He said, these things are happening. You have these people over here. Kyle Kaminsky works for Michigan Department of Corrections. Miss Washington works as the director of the Department of Corrections. I sent a letter to the Democratic governor and said, neither one of these people need to be nowhere near government. We have a lot of people right now who are hurting inside these prisons, who are hurting, people who have been convicted on false reporting. I'm a whistleblower, and I don't have a problem saying that I'm a whistleblowing legislator. Always have been, and I'm not airing grievances. This is who Cynthia A. Johnson has always been as a legislator. I've been back in those back rooms, baby, fighting for us. I had a legislator look just like us who came directly to me and said, hey, listen, if you vote for House Bill 4472, I think that's what it was, 4472, Airbnbs, you vote for this one. If you vote for this legislation, I think it was in 2020, 21. You vote for this legislation, we'll be able to give, the speaker says that he's going to promise $1 million to your district. I said, hell no. Well, what about your illegal dumping bill? I was threatened for not to be taken up by the House if I didn't vote yes. I was threatened. So I'm not, we have to be careful. Are we voting for people based on the D and the R or the I's? Or are we voting for people based on integrity? Are we voting for people based on knowing that we want to get justice in our communities? Do we really want justice? Because there's so much systemic racism and wrong that is developed based on laws.
Yes.
Well,
these laws are created to help some, and it's made to hurt.
Well, here's what I know, though, and I hear you, and you're right. But one thing I know, just to take two random states, look at California and look at Florida.
Oh, God.
And things aren't perfect in either place. But out there in California, and I know this because I've been working with a few people, they're trying to roll back felony murder. And for those of you who don't know, felony murder is, okay, if you are committing a bank robbery and someone dies in the course of that bank robbery, it could be because you hit them with the getaway car. It could be, and there have been cases on this, they have a heart attack during your bank robbery. You never touched them, right? California is rolling that back. California is about to become the first state to seriously study reparations on a statewide level. California is trying to do these things. California is making a lot of progress towards environmental, law as well. Look at Florida. They're trying to ban critical race theory.
Yeah.
They definitely don't want women to have a say in what they do.
But we don't have critical race theory.
I know, that's the thing.
So that's an oxymoron.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's dumb because I taught critical race theory. It's a law school class.
It's a law class.
But the point is that the reason why California can be trying to roll back these things and trying to be on the verge of passing what they call second look laws, and also making it easier for people to get their sentences reviewed, is because it's run by Democrats. Pretty much everybody that has power at the state level there is in the Democratic Party. You look over here at Florida and the mess they got going on. Who's running things in Tallahassee? And ask yourself, what kind of America do you want to live in? Would you rather live in an America where we're trying to have fruitful conversations about the environment, about reparations, about criminal justice? Or would you rather be somewhere where people are trying to showboat and score political points off of our misery? And that, I think, is something that we have to look at, because the Republicans are really, they're literally weaponizing our pain and suffering. They call it owning the libs. Like, oh yeah, let's do this. So when they pass a law that hurts trans kids or the LGBT community, you know, and people get upset because that's their life or that's their family, they get happy about that because they're like, yeah, we own the libs. That's all they have right now. The Republicans have zero policy or platform that they want to do other than keeping the Democratic Party from doing things that might actually help people.
And explain to me, okay, so now we have that. We know that there are Republicans who are fighting us tooth and nail from doing many things, and to just visit and study reparations doesn't mean that in the Constitution in California, and I don't know how California's Constitution is based on the Supreme Court's decision with regard to affirmative action, and that affirmative action was only as a result of university here in Michigan. And that was in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. So
those are two different things. Affirmative action reparations are not legally the same.
Excuse me, because the reparation bills that I introduced in Michigan couldn't go anywhere because of the Constitution, because of that particular Supreme Court ruling. But Michigan didn't have to add extra things into it. They could have just said you can't have biases, or you can't be prejudiced against people in colleges. But no, Michigan added governments, they added businesses. They said you pretty much.
Yeah, that was a referendum that voters approved, though, and that's different. And at the federal level, we don't have that. And what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, yes, it's a problem. And every state that has had the ability to let voters do that, it always comes out against people of color. I have yet to see one that comes out for people of color.
But my point of it is that all typically those citizens initiatives typically come out of your elected officials. They're in the background doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
Typically that's where it comes from. The community just doesn't come out of their own head and say, oh, well, this is what we want to do. But if they did, they can't really do it without those elected officials, those legislators who can help out to make it happen. What we need to do here in Michigan is to also have another citizens initiative in order to, the legislature could do it too, though, but we have to amend, what is that? It's Article 1, Section 2. Article 1, Section 2 of the Michigan Constitution. That needs to be amended because that particular piece of language literally, and it is my view, that it dismisses racism. It dismisses the wrongs. It dismisses the wrongs, saying that we cannot get a repayment for the wrongs of your forefathers. We cannot get repayment. I'm talking about us, those of us who are descendants of slaves.
No, I've been working with NCOBRA in various ways since like I was in law school. No, I'm very well aware. But the thing is, what I'm trying to say is that
you are aware, but the people who are listening to us.
No, but what I'm saying is that the point I'm making is a much smaller one, which is that I have yet to see anybody in the Republican Party come out for reparations. If y'all have seen it, please correct me.
I haven't
I
seen
wouldn't hold my breath waiting for it to happen either.
Yeah, but there are large numbers of folks on the other side who not only support it, but have taken the moves to study it. And yes, a study seems like a mamby-pamby kind of thing, but you can't do anything in government until you first study something. That's the first step.
How long do we have to study this thing?
I don't know,
I'm tired.
but the fact is, no one's ever even got that far yet. This is in my lifetime. I did not think when I first started working on and thinking about reparations in like 1999, 2000, I didn't think we would get this far. We've actually had the first city in America to actually vote to give out reparations, and some others that have done some programs that aren't quite reparations, because in theory, they're not 100% limited to Black folks, but that's basically the same sort of intent behind it. And what their population is, it's like 90% of it is going to Black folk. If the point is, I have yet to see a Republican-controlled government entity at the federal, state, or local level put any sort of weight behind anything that's going to benefit us in the long run.
Girl, you making me
grapple with that.
You are making me lose my mind right here. I'm loving this conversation, but you are making me lose my mind, because I'm looking at this thing from a whole entirely different
yes, and I am too, because
arena.
we can't look at it based on one state, one place, one law, one. We have to look at it. The Native Americans used to say, we have to look at every decision for what it's going to look like 7 generations down the line. And I told people in 2016, I lost friends. People were mad at me because I said, I don't care how you feel about Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton could have killed your dog yesterday, and you still need to vote for her, because if Donald Trump gets in there, the judges that he appoints, especially the Supreme Court,
that's the truth.
It's going to take us at least 2 generations to undo the damage that will be done. And look what's happening. And they've only got so far to women's rights. They're about to get to affirmative action and to voting rights. It's about to get uglier every time that they issue rulings that have to do with our folks who are marginalized communities, whether it's Black folks, whether it's women, whether it's disabled people, whether it's the LGBTQ community, whatever it is. We are in for hard times. And the only way, we had a shot in 2016, because if Hillary had gotten elected, the whole Supreme Court would be different right now.
Yes.
You know what? I'm going to tell you, I believe that we, Black Americans, had a shot on December 2nd, 2020, when I stood up in that committee and I was fighting for our votes. We had an opportunity then that we did not pick up and carry across the finishing line. Why is it when white people are dealing with certain issues, we jump all on top of that? Why is that? Why is it that we cannot support our own? Why is it that when issues like this come up, when our people are being attacked, that we talk about it in our silos, but to support each other, to come out and support, so that the world will be able to see, oh, we can't mess with that one right there, because they got support. If you understand what I'm saying. But if we're not supporting each other,
yeah. Well, listen, ladies,
continue to do what they're doing.
We are way over schedule, almost by 23 minutes. And I knew that I knew we had a group of talkers. So I knew I already had in my mind that we were going to go over, but I have enjoyed you all so much, and we'll have to all come back together because we need to have this discussion again, because it's going to keep going for a while, and who knows what happens Tuesday. I just pray for our country. I pray for all of you.
Yes.
I pray for our safety for all of us. I pray for you, Cynthia. You, Narissa, keep it with the law. Latrice, I know you holding it down in New York.
I want to say one thing, Pam, if you don't mind. You know, I don't want anyone, and certainly not my sisters, to think that I'm against us or our party, but I definitely want to hold our party accountable.
Yes.
And for us not, you know, of course, the Republicans their leadership, that's how I should put it. The leadership would not want to see anything that has to do with reparations. I'm sure that there's somebody in their party who believes in it, but who is carrying the water for its party. But be for sure that even though there's not Republicans, and we have some on our side who's given the money, trust and believe, they're profiting from this. Some of them,
yes,
are profiting even off of the idea of reparations. I know that for a fact.
Okay.
And I'll come back.
We need to hold them accountable. I agree.
With those
they won't be
agencies
accountable if they don't get elected first.
Right, which means we all got to get out and vote. And so we have these conversations like this so that we all are remaining conscious about what's going on in our nation, so that some folks just don't listen to the regular news. They don't listen to pundits and whatnot. So we have to be the people's pundit.
Yes.
And so that we can educate people. And fortunately with YouTube, you can, and social media, you can spread the love around. So guys, if you've enjoyed this session, and if there's some of you who are in office, running for office, thinking about running for office, whatever, have you're a politico, email me. It's running across the screen here. I'd love to hear from you and have you on the show. Okay. All right. And Cynthia, I hope you run again. Okay.
I'm watching. And the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan is off the chain right now. That's all I can say. But you know, I'm just watching from afar, and maybe I will one day. I don't know, but I sure am praying for all of us, and especially that we have peace on Monday and Tuesday, and who knows, they may already they have a lot going on, much more than we can even speculate.
Right. And Latrice, you stay safe there in New York and all of that craziness. And Renee Shaw,
thank you.
Back to New York. Stay safe.
God bless you all.
All of your legal expertise.
Good night, ladies.
All right. Good night. Let's wave them off, guys. Good night.
Good night. Stay safe, everyone.
Good night, everybody.